I'm going to show a video run through of making one completed circuit board for the Awesomewall. And when it's done, it'll look like this. You know, if it's here are the parts and pieces. A printed circuit board, the green thing. These 4 white squares are the light emitting diodes. They're the thing we're interested in. There's an element called a capacitor that protects these guys from small power surges that can hurt them. There's a header, 3x1 header, which is what, and then there's these wires, and basically each set of wires plugs into the header of the pixel right below it in line. It's kind of how these things work. So let's get going. Here's, oh, come on. There's the raw blank circuit board. First thing is we need wires cut to just the right length, and I made some marks on this cardboard here to help me get that right. Black is ground. That's true both in low voltage electronics like this and in wiring your house. Red is the positive voltage. And green is sometimes used for data. Lots of colors are actually used for data. We are going to use white for data. Okay, I've cut them to the right length. We now need to strip the ends off. And the free end that goes into the next header needs to have about 1/4 inch stripped off. So I've set the gauge on this wire stripper to, I think, about the right length. Yep. Ta-da. About like that. You can actually probably do 2 or 3 at a time. Like that. Now we need the other end stripped to about 1/8 inch. Just needs to be long enough for the other end of the wire to basically poke through the circuit board and let us get a solder joint on there. So, yeah, that looks about right. A little short. There we go. Okay, set that aside. The other components that we're going to need will be, as I mentioned, the header. Got a bunch of those. And the capacitor. And the LEDs come on this spool. So I actually think it probably makes sense to put the LEDs on first. So there's 2 different methods of soldering that we need to employ. The first is called surface mount, or SMT, and it works like this. I've got this solder paste in a syringe, and these biggish silver pads you see here each need a little glob of solder paste. So let's do it. And the stuff is kind of thick. Come on, there it goes. And I'm putting a dab on there that's maybe about this, a little bigger than a poppy seed. It doesn't need a ton. You don't want too much because it'll, you know, when we do the next step, it will turn into, you know, metal that conducts electricity, and we don't want it to bridge between pads. And in fact, I got a little kind of streak here that I'm going to clean off so it doesn't make an inadvertent connection between 2 different pads, because that will keep this thing from working. Okay, here's the real of these LEDs, and if I'm smart about this, I can peel off the tape for 4 of them. They're all in the same orientation, and they're all oriented to be just plunked on just the way I've got the board oriented. So I should just be able to go 1. Well, see, he moved, so now I need to, there's a very tiny indication of which way is which on these things, so since I dropped it, I had to figure that out. But if I'm careful, and kind of smush each one into its little bed of solder paste. Cool. Okay. This is a hot air soldering iron, and as soon as you pick it up, it turns itself on and it heats up to whatever temperature you dial in. So I dialed this into 300 degrees, and it feels like it's there. So the way you do this type of soldering is actually pretty easy. Just point the hot air at the solder pads, and you just kind of have to wait while it heats everything up, and the solder paste sort of melts and turns into, there it goes, actual solder. Lovely. Now I can move on to the next one. Which went a lot faster because it's getting warmed up from just the wash of hot air everywhere. Okay, done. I'm just gonna give a look. Yep, looks pretty good. But it's also a moment for this to cool down a little bit. Okay, next step. I'm not sure what the best order to do this in is. Let's try it this way. Let's try putting the wires on first. And then we'll put the other, ow, okay, this is still hot. Dumbass. Okay. This is called a friend, this tool. It's just an extra set of hands. One thing I'll point out on the circuit board is there's tiny lettering that labels DO, stands for data out, or nope, this is DI, data in, GND is ground, and plus 5 volts. So that tells you, that tells you 2 things. That tells you which color wire goes where, and that also tells you that I did this one wrong, because I reversed these guys. If we do that for real, bad things will happen. So don't be like me. So, plus 5 is the first one. I'm gonna put them in here. Then ground, right? Yep. And then data. I'm just going to make sure those wires are seated. I've got some lead-free solder. Got my regular soldering iron heated up. I'm going to jab it in this to take the corrosion, the oxidation off. And I'm going to just quickly solder these guys on. There's 1, 2, 3 solder joints. Very good. Now we can take our, by the way, this type of soldering is called, these are called through-hole components, and you can probably guess why, because their leads go through a hole. So I put the capacitor through. Nice thing, some capacitors have to go in a particular orientation. These ones don't, so you sort of can't screw that up. And then I'm going to put the header in, and same thing, it doesn't matter which, there's no direction on those. I can't really bend the leads on the header because they're very short, so I'm just going to sort of sit it down like that. Probably a little funny, but it works. And then soldering is really pretty easy. You just touch the iron to the sort of the spot between the little silver pad on the circuit board and the lead coming through. Give it a second to heat up, and then touch it with the solder, and you're good to go. Now, I only soldered 1 of the 3 leads on the header because I thought maybe it'd be nice to have an opportunity to straighten it before soldering the other 2 leads. I can also imagine that there may be some jig or appliance that we develop that makes this go a lot faster. Okay, last step, clip off the leads from the capacitor, and we have a completed circuit board. The only thing left from this point would be to put it in a little test rig, and that could be a separate video.